Let's talk about the NFC. That one hurt. Early season significant wager on the Cardinals to win the Super Bowl, and that was looking like it was going to be perhaps magical.
Yeah.
But they were manhandled from start to finish. Have the stars for the Cardinals, those big names, they really didn't step up. Did that surprise you, Taylor, as much as it surprised everybody else?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the big three on the Cardinals. Patrick Peterson on defense, Carson Palmer, and Larry Fitzgerald on offense, and all of them had duds for a game. Peterson had the one interception, but that barely made up for the muffed punt he had earlier in the game. Getting beat deep. What drives me crazy about teams that play the Panthers, you're matched up against Philly Brown and Ted Ginn. You know what they're going to do. They're going to try and bait you inside and then burn you deep. And nobody stays deep enough against this team. And they only catch 50% of the passes they throw to them, and they still end up with like 5 catches for 150 yards apiece. So from start to finish, this was a bludgeoning, and Cardinals had no answer.
You mentioned the muff punt by Patrick Peterson, and I would say the interception. Yeah, I mean, obviously if they'd scored, maybe it makes up for it. But I don't think so. I mean, I think the game ended there. It's 17-7 at that point. That punt was near midfield. A real opportunity for the Cardinals, even if they just, if they put together 20 yards and kick a field goal, all of a sudden it's a one-score game. I think based on what we saw the rest of the game, Cardinals probably weren't winning it, but it changes everything. I mean, obviously, the difference between 17-10 and 17-14, and all of a sudden it's 24-7 again, and all your work is undone. When it must have occurred at some point defensively, we can't stop these guys, and they couldn't stop them at all.
So, Taylor, I was curious because last week, the Carolina Panthers gave up 24 points to the Seattle Seahawks in the second half. They had trouble containing Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson and Cam Newton, at least similar style mobile quarterbacks, they extend plays. What did Carolina do differently defensively and offensively in the second half compared to last week to really put an end to the Cardinals' chances of any kind of comeback?
Yeah, and that's kind of been the the Panthers' MO lately, is they're giving up these second half leads. And, I was sitting around watching the game joking, 17-0, that's not going to be enough. 24-0, that's going to be enough. But you hit it on the head. It's an offensive and defensive thing. And offensively, I think, was the biggest turnaround from this game to last week's game is they just kept the foot on the pedal. They stayed aggressive. We saw Newton continue to go down the field. They continued with the quarterback powers. And then defensively, I think it was more about it not being Seattle than anything else. I mean, Russell Wilson is, whether you get to him or not, he's going to scramble around. He's going to wear out your defense. And eventually that's going to come to a head. But Carson Palmer yesterday was just like a sitting duck back there. And similar to how Denver got home, Carolina did much the same. They got home with 4, but Carolina throws in these trap zones behind it in coverage. And you would think that Carson, being in the league for as long as he has seen everything, and that wasn't going to get to him, but it just wasn't his night, and Carolina kept getting the turnovers, and I think they ended up +5 in that category. So you're not going to lose too many ball games playing like that.
They turned the ball over 7 times. Palmer had 6 turnovers.
Right.
I don't think that's a thumb problem
and
or a finger problem. I think that's a
yeah. I mean, that's
a quarterbacking problem.
Yeah, that seemed like maybe a head problem. I don't know. Fans, we look at games differently than guys like you who've played them at a high competitive level. And I want to get back real quick, if I could, to Peterson's muffed punt. As a fan and a guy who's watched a lot of football, and I try to be thoughtful about it, even when I have money on it. And I thought, that's it. They lost. If Carolina scores here, they'll have lost, and they did. Do players think that way at all? Not so much the dramatic, we've lost here, but would the Cardinals bench have known how big a moment that was? You've cut it to 17-7. You stop them. You have the ball in good field position on a bad punt, and you turn it over right then. Does that sinking feeling matter, or do professionals power through that easily?
It's hard to say what their mindset was, but in that position before, I would say that you're never going to, particularly that early in the game, you're never going to let those thoughts into your mind, especially when you guys have Larry Fitzgerald, David Johnson out of the backfield, Carson Palmer. I mean, this is still we even saw it last week. Even Carson Palmer had a couple turnovers last week as well, but he kept throwing it down the field, and eventually you're going to make a play like they did in overtime when Fitzgerald blew out for 80 yards and a near score to finish that game. So I think in their mind, they're thinking, we've got some of the best receivers in the league. We've got Carson Palmer. Whatever you can say about him, you can still put him among the at least top 15 in the league. So you're never out of the game completely, but and we talked about it before with Carolina giving up second half leads. So I don't think at that point they're thinking it, but it wasn't long after that I'm sure some of those thoughts creeped in their mind.
After what you saw Sunday, what are your first thoughts on the Super Bowl?
Man, it's because the way Carolina won, it's hard for that not to influence your thoughts going into Super Bowl Sunday. I don't think Denver's seen a rushing attack like Carolina has. We talked about how great their pass rush and their corners were on the outside yesterday. But Carolina's going to come at them a little differently with Jonathan Stewart and really Cam Newton at 6'6", he's not 240. That guy's at least 260 coming downhill. And the way they run that quarterback power to get a numbers advantage on the defense, it's going to be hard to bet against Carolina. So I'd probably go with them this early on in my prediction.
They're right now, they're 4.5 point favorite.
It went up.
And a number of a total of 45. I mean, I got it. Both these teams can certainly.
The
Carolina.
way your weekend's going, I should just take whoever you bet against.
Yeah. By the way, man, this is the worst week I've ever had in my entire life. You know, looking at a total of 45. I don't know. I'm not really asking Taylor gambling questions, but the Carolina can score points. But right now, the way those two teams played defensively, it is hard for me to remember off the top of my head a Super Bowl with two defenses at least playing as well. Denver, as we said, best defense in the league this year, but we're not, we were never talking about the 85 Bears or the 01 Ravens here. But these are two defenses that are playing as well now as they've played all year, correct?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt about it. And if I was going to historically look at it, I'd probably have to go back to the Giants-Ravens Super Bowl in 2000. If my mind serves me correctly, I think they were the 1 and 2 defenses in the NFL. Jason, you might know being a Giants fan, but you're right. I mean, and let's not forget, we're still talking about Cam Newton, who's probably going to win the MVP, and Peyton Manning, who, by the way, is a walk-in first ballot Hall of Famer. So the defenses are going to get a lot of the stories leading up to this, but we've got some great quarterback play too, depending on if Manning's arm is healthy and however we're going to view him. But yeah, obviously the defenses are the storyline.
I was just going to say, just touch on your point, Taylor. It's not parity, but the similarities between those NFC and AFC Championship games and these AFC and NFC Championship games. The Giants blew out the Vikings 41-0 in the NFC Championship game, and then got dominated by the Baltimore Ravens defense. Granted, the one major difference is Kerry Collins is not Cam Newton. So
no, and that Ravens defense was
Ray Lewis
otherworldly.
Prime
but and so the talk, as you said, Taylor, is going to be about the defense for Denver, and they were great. We'd never seen Manning struggle like that, but and Peyton Manning didn't have to do much, but when he did have to do stuff, he was pretty good.
Fine.
I mean, he can't obviously, he certainly knows well. I've seldom seen a quarterback sack himself more, but he can't get away, and he knows it, and I admire that. He's like, this ends disastrously if I kick another step. I'm going to fumble. I'm going to throw an interception. I'm going to get hurt. I'm going down. But when he had to make those throws, I mean, the 2 touchdowns to Daniels were great throws, and a lot of other big throws too. I mean, he's. I mean, it's a crazy thing to say about Peyton Manning, but he's good enough to win a Super Bowl, isn't he?
Right. I mean, there's not a better quarterback out there that throws an uglier ball.
Right.
I mean, he's not going to win the award for the prettiest throw, but with Manning, and it's always been this way with Manning, he puts you in the right situations, whether it's pre-snap or sees something no one else sees during the actual play. And it's not going to be every time. He had a lot of misses too. I think I saw 2 or 3 balls, one to Norwood that should have been an easy touchdown that he threw him. Norwood dove and it went off his fingertips.
That's right. That would have been a third touchdown. Yeah, he was wide open.
He's not going to make every throw, but the ones he makes are going to be just enough, I think.
And he didn't make any glaring mistakes. I mean, the mistakes were missed receivers. They certainly weren't turnovers.
And when he hit those balls deep to Daniels, we saw before the Patriots had 10, 9, 10, sometimes 11 guys lined up in press right across the line of scrimmage. They weren't going to back up until they saw Manning could beat him deep. And then Manning, the one ball to Emmanuel Sanders, I think it was the 34-yard completion, either towards the end of the first quarter or early second quarter. it wasn't a great throw. Sanders went up and caught it, but that right there to me said, okay, Manning's at least going to throw it deep when he needs to, and the Patriots are going to have to respect that. And that was a little bit of a difference maker with the way they were going to attack him.
I like the tie next week. I'm going to bet on the tie. Yeah, first Super Bowl tie. I feel it. Feel it good. I'm going to make everything back. Taylor, thank you. Great to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
Go Gophers.
Like, favorite, subscribe. Make sure to check out Taylor on Twitter if you want. It's all in the description box below. Leave your NFC and AFC Championship Game thoughts in the comment section below. See you next time.